A wine glass shatters against marble. Red spreads across ivory fabric, bleeding into the only light colour in a room designed for gold and power. Laughter follows. Careful, a woman says lightly. Some colours stain permanently. She kneels. Not because she agrees, not because she accepts it, but because broken glass still cuts the same, no matter who dropped it. A heel nudges a shard closer to her fingers. Let her bleed. And then, a man's voice, calm and unhurried. Who touched her? The laughter dies first, then the movement, then the air itself. She doesn't look up immediately. She already knows what humiliation feels like. She just doesn't yet know what interruption feels like. When she finally raises her eyes, he isn't standing. He's seated. Dark suit, still posture, no visible anger, but everyone else is suddenly afraid. The woman who spilled the wine laughs. She asks who he thinks he is. He doesn't answer. He only says it. Again. Apologize. Not louder, not sharper, just final. Phones disappear from tables, whispers ripple. Someone recognizes him, someone always does. The apology comes, but not to the man, to her. And for the first time that night she stands while someone else lowers their eyes. It should feel like rescue. It doesn't, it feels like exposure. He requests her table, specifically. The staff stare. The owner warns her in the kitchen that men like him don't choose girls like her for kind reasons. She returns to the dining room anyway. She pours his tea without spilling a drop. He watches the precision of her hands. Why do you stay? He asks. Because leaving is louder than staying. He studies that answer like it's a strategy, not a sentence. He notices the faint scar near her wrist. You don't pull your hand away. It healed. There is something in the way she says it that makes him look at her longer than he planned. The doors open again. 3 men enter, dressed in wealth but carrying something sharper than money. They greet him like an old rival greets a king he'd like to dethrone. You've grown sentimental, one of them says. No reaction, until a hand reaches for her wrist. Pretty toy. The movement that follows is so controlled it almost looks gentle. A twist, a shift, a body pressed down against polished wood. No shouting, no chaos, just dominance. He releases the man and adjusts his sleeve. She's mine. The word isn't romantic, it's territorial, and in a world built on leverage, claiming something means someone else will try to take it. She feels the shift instantly. When they are alone in the hallway, she turns to him. I am not property. You were never theirs. You put a target on me. Yes. No apology, just truth. She studies him carefully now. Kang Jae-min. The name lands between them like a verdict. Strategist. Investor. Invisible architect of power in Seoul, and he just made her visible. You could have ignored it, she says. I don't ignore disrespect. You don't even know me. His gaze doesn't waver. I know enough. But knowing enough is not the same as asking. That night, instead of accepting protection, she does something unexpected. She offers information. Lee Searin's father is moving capital out of your port holdings, she says quietly. He's been planning it for weeks. He pauses for the first time. How do you know that? I serve the table. Every insult she absorbed, every careless whisper, every arrogant conversation spoken in front of the girl they thought invisible. She heard all of it, she remembered. In his office, above the city, she sits across from him, not beside him. The skyline glows blue against glass walls. The room is quiet enough to hear breath patterns. He tests her, names, dates, connections. She answers, without hesitation. Patterns form where he hadn't seen them. A silent coup dissolves before it can bloom. For the first time, he looks at her not as someone to shield, but as someone who shifts outcomes. What would you do if the thing they mocked you for became your greatest weapon? He leans back slightly. What do you want? It's the first question he asks that isn't strategic. She holds his gaze. Respect. Not money, not protection, not revenge, just respect. The retaliation comes days later. The restaurant lights flicker during peak service. Power disruption, a message. Guests panic, staff scatter, security moves toward her automatically. She steps away from them and walks to stand beside him. Not behind, beside. The rival appears, smile thin. Weakness destroys kings. Before he can respond, she does. Only insecure ones. Silence spreads wider than fear. The man studies her, as if recalculating everything he assumed. Finally speaks. This is Amara Okoye. A pause that feels deliberate. Remember her name, not possession, recognition. The balance shifts in the room. The same socialites who laughed days ago can't meet her eyes now. The owner bows slightly when handing her coat. Later, when the restaurant empties and the night softens, she removes the stained blouse in the staff room and replaces it with structured emerald fabric. He waits by the doorway. I don't protect what I can't afford to lose, he says quietly. She buttons the coat. Then don't lose. Outside, the city hums under neon light. They stand at an overlook, the distance between them smaller now, but not careless. He didn't rescue her. She didn't submit to him. They chose alignment, and somewhere behind tinted glass, someone powerful watches them both. Interesting choice, a voice murmurs. Power never sleeps, but neither does dignity. And this time, she isn't kneeling. Flashes explode against polished marble. A national seal stands behind a podium. Criminal enterprises, Senator Park Dae-ho says evenly, often hide behind sympathetic faces. A screen lights up behind him. Amara's image fills it. Not the emerald coat, not the skyline, the wine-stained blouse, the kneeling moment. Headlines crawl beneath her face. Foreign-born associate linked to syndicate chairman. Phones vibrate across Seoul. Commentators lean forward in studio chairs. Is this foreign interference? Has Kang Jae-min been compromised? Is this how criminal networks soften their image? High above the city, Kang watches the broadcast without blinking. No anger, no visible reaction, just calculation. The skyline behind him glows cold blue. A soft knock. Amara steps into the office. Emerald coat, shoulders squared, expression steady. She has already seen everything. They want you to choose, she says quietly, between power and me. The senator's voice continues in the background, speaking about investigations, national stability, foreign influence. Kang turns the television off. The silence feels deliberate. This isn't about investigation, he says. It's about leverage. She walks to the glass wall and looks down at the city. Then let's change who has it. The pressure begins immediately. Auditors arrive at Kang's headquarters with official documentation and controlled smiles. Accounts flagged. Projects paused. Advisors whisper that distance might be wise, that optics matter, that attachments create vulnerabilities. Kang listens, then dismisses them all. Across the city, Amara sits in a government office beneath fluorescent lights, while a bureaucrat reviews her paperwork slowly, almost theatrically. Questions about travel history, questions about family, questions about loyalty. She answers every one of them without hesitation. Outside, cameras wait. Inside the National Assembly, Senator Park reviews polling data and smiles faintly. She is pressure, he tells an aide, he will fold. But folding is not what happens. Late at night, in a quiet room lined with development files, Amara studies port redevelopment records from Busan. Shipping routes, shell corporations, campaign contributions layered through construction subsidiaries. She notices a pattern. The numbers don't lie. Money from a redevelopment project tied to Kang's territory has been quietly redirected into Park's re-election fund. She sits back in her chair and makes a decision. She schedules a meeting with the senator, alone. His office is polished and restrained, national flags placed precisely behind him. "You're not Korean enough to survive this," he says calmly, hands folded. She holds his gaze. "I'm Korean enough to understand shame." She slides a thin folder across his desk. He opens it, glances, closes it. "Prove it," he says. The war shifts. Days later, an investigative journalist receives encrypted files from an anonymous source, not enough to destroy a career. Enough to raise questions. News panels pivot. Questions raised about Senator Park's funding. Opposition calls for transparency. The narrative trembles. In his office, Kang traces the digital trail. He realizes who moved the piece. "You acted without telling me," he says. "You would have stopped me," she replies. His jaw tightens. "You risked everything." "So did you." Silence fills the space between them. If trust means protection, what happens when protection becomes limitation? Senator Park retaliates quickly. Formal criminal inquiry, bank accounts frozen, public summons issued. Amara is called to testify before a committee beneath bright institutional lights. Cameras flash as she walks through the corridor. She does not rush. She does not hide. Inside the chamber, lawmakers question her associations, her background, her intentions. She answers with clarity, never defensive, never emotional. Facts only. Outside, the story continues to grow, because this time she doesn't leak selectively. She routes the full financial documentation through international oversight channels connected to Nigerian-Korean trade partnerships, cross-border compliance authorities, independent auditors, structures Park cannot quietly silence. The explosion is immediate. Major outlets break the full scandal, shell corporations traced, campaign funds exposed, party leadership distances themselves overnight. Poll numbers collapse. In his office, for the first time, Senator Park's composure cracks. His hands remain folded, but his eyes flicker. A press conference is scheduled. This time, the tone is different. "Pending investigation," he says, stepping down temporarily. Flashbulbs fire. The same media machine that elevated him now devours him. High above the city, Kang stands beside Amara, not in front of her. "You were never my weakness," he says quietly. She watches the skyline. "You were never my shield." There is no dramatic embrace, no theatrical confession, only alignment, power, shared deliberately. Days later, in a quiet government office, a presidential aide flips through a file. Kang Jae-min, Amara Okoye. The aide closes it slowly. "Keep watching them." In the corridor of the National Assembly, officials step aside as Amara walks past. Not out of fear, out of recognition. The woman they tried to frame as leverage has become a strategist in her own right. And this time, no one is asking if she belongs. Rain taps softly against tinted glass. A black SUV waits across the street as Amara steps out of a trade policy building, emerald coat catching the streetlight for just a second before she disappears into shadow. Inside the vehicle, a man speaks quietly into an earpiece. Confirmed. She's moving independently. Miles away, in a room lit by blue digital glow, her name appears on a screen. Amara Okoye, Kang Jae-min. Graphs spike upward beside their profiles. Economic influence index rising. In the presidential strategy office, Lee Hyun-woo stands by a wide window overlooking Seoul. An aide places a thin folder on his desk. They are expanding beyond projected tolerance. Lee opens it, reads, closes it. Begin regulatory constriction. The tightening starts without headlines, trade permits stall, overseas transactions freeze, pending review. Travel clearances delay, no accusations, just friction, the kind designed to suffocate quietly. Kang stands in his high-rise office watching notifications stack across his screen. His expression doesn't change, but the pattern is clear. Across the city, Amara studies the same delays. She doesn't call him. Instead, her phone rings. Unknown number. The presidential office would appreciate a private consultation. Not a request. A warning wrapped in courtesy. The next day, she walks into the presidential strategy office alone. Cool white lighting, glass walls, minimalist precision. Lee Hyun-woo watches her without blinking. "You are accelerating influence beyond comfort levels," he says evenly. She doesn't sit until he gestures. "Comfort for whom?" she asks. His pause is deliberate. "For the country." Translation: for control. Within days, a national security review is initiated against Kang's international partners. Soft rumors begin circulating in financial circles. Foreign exposure, risk assessment, nothing direct, everything implied. Kang confronts her that evening. "You met him alone?" "Yes." "You negotiate alone too often." "You are too visible." The distance between them isn't physical, it's strategic, but neither steps away. Late at night, Amara reviews stalled trade directives line by line. Buried inside draft language, she finds it. A confidential executive concession agreement, port access rights quietly reallocated to foreign corporations tied to presidential donors. If executed quietly, Kang's leverage weakens. If exposed recklessly, markets destabilize. She leans back slowly. Now she understands. The pressure isn't punishment, it's preparation. A subtle tail vehicle follows her the next day. She notices it in the reflection of a storefront window. She almost smiles. "They're nervous," she murmurs. Meanwhile, the national security narrative sharpens. Analysts question Kang's overseas ties on late-night business panels. Nothing explosive, just enough to plant doubt. Kang studies the news in silence. "They are escalating," he says. "Only because they think we'll panic," she replies. She doesn't retaliate. She waits. And then she requests another meeting. This time, she sits across from Lee Hyun-woo with complete stillness. "I'm aware of the concession draft," she says calmly. He doesn't react, but his eyes sharpen. "I'm not here to threaten exposure," she continues. "I'm here to prevent instability." She explains the risk of market shock, the ripple through trade alliances, the vulnerability it creates for the presidency itself. "You remove the national security pressure," she says softly, "and the policy remains invisible." Silence stretches. For the first time, Lee studies her not as leverage, but as liability. "You're dangerous," he says. "So are you," she answers. Days later, a limited brief appears in international financial press. Not a scandal, not an accusation, a question. Executive review of port policy raises transparency concerns. Markets respond cautiously. Analysts speculate. The presidential office quietly delays the concession. Within 48 hours, the National Security Review on Kang is suspended. No announcement, no apology, just silence. Kang looks at her differently now. "You move like you don't need me," he says one night as the city glows below them. She turns toward him. "I move because I need us." The fracture softens. In the presidential strategy office, Lee closes a file marked with both their names. "This ends here. he tells her during their final meeting. She rises from her chair. No, she says gently. It pauses. There is no handshake, only mutual understanding. In a private wing of the presidential residence, a shadowed figure watches the skyline. We underestimated her. Back on the overlook, Kang and Amara stand side by side, not touching, not hiding. Above them, the city stretches endlessly. This time, they are not being targeted by headlines or senators. They are being measured by the state itself. And for the first time, the state is calculating them carefully.